Hey guys, are you ready to start reading a new book? Well, you already know that we finished reading Cookie, so now it's a brand new story. Our new book for today is Hetty Feather. This is my favorite book. Cookie is no longer my favorite book anymore. After I finished reading this book, I found that this book was so awesome that I love it straight away. So this book is called Hetty Feather, which is the story of this girl. Let's get started. Today, we'll read chapter 1. Are you excited? I'm super excited, even though I've finished the whole story, but I want to read this again to share with you my favorite story. So this is Hetty Feather, written by Jacqueline Wilson. So let's get started. Chapter 1. My name is Hetty Feather. Don't mock. It's not my real name. I'm absolutely certain my mother would have picked a beautiful romantic name for me, though sadly I have not turned out beautiful or romantic. I shall picture her, my little darling, my mother whispered, wrapping me up tightly in a shawl. She held me close to her chest, as if she could never bear to let me go. My little Rosamond, Stephanie, Christabel, my eyes are my best feature, as blue as the summer sky. The she perhaps called me Sapphire, Azure, Bluebell. I like to think my baby hair had not yet sprouted from my little pink head. A bald baby can still just about be beautiful. An infant with hair as scarlet as sin is an abomination, spawned of devil. So says Matron Bottomley, and she pulls my hair hard, once when I kicked her really wondrously, calling her Matron Stinking Bottomley. She pulled so fiercely, a whole hank of my hair came away in her hand. She would have been in trouble if anyone had spotted my poor bald batch, but she crammed my cap down hard, and no one saw. Well, 200 foundling girls witnessed her assault on me, but Matron Bottomley didn't give a fig about them. It took an entire year for my hair to grow back properly, but it was worth it, because from that day onwards, we were all referred to her as Matron Stinking Bottomley, though not out loud. No other girl is as bold as me. I have a nature as fiery as my gretch hair. I do so hope I was bold when I was newly born in 1876. Suppose I came into the world with little red turf. Oh, dearie, what a shock for my poor mother. Maybe she was tempted to call me carrot or goldfish or Mammalita. No, I'm absolutely certain my mother wouldn't mock me. She held me close. She rubbed her cheek over my flaming head. She gently wound a little lock around her finger. She loved my red hair because it was mine. She cut off one tiny tuft to plait with pins and kept within a locket. That way, she kept a small part of me forever. She didn't want to give me away. She loved me with all her heart. I know I was a poor, punny little thing, hardly weighing so much as a twist of sugar. I'm sure my mother nursed me night and day, trying her hardest to build me up and make me strong if I closed my eyes. Now and hunched up small, I can almost feel her arms round me, her hair humming a lullaby, smell her sweet perfume, claps her white hand with my tiny little fingers. I cannot focus properly, but if I try really hard, I can see her pale face, the tears in her own blue eyes. Everyone says you can't remember back to babyhood. I've asked nurses and the teachers, and they all the same. Even Jim insisted this is true, and he is the wisest boy ever. However, I'm absolutely certain they are all wrong on this point. I can remember. I remember the worst day ever, when my mother bathed me and dressed me in a napkin and my petticoats and a little white gown she had stitched herself. She grabbed me up in a croquet shawl and then carried me outside. She took me on a long, long journey. I'm sure I remember the roar and whistle of a train. Then I think we took a cab because I cried at the strange bumping and the clack of the horses' hooves. She held me tighter, rocking me in her arms, crying too. Then the bump clack stopped and my mother stayed crouching inside, shaking, so that I shook too. The cabman shouted at her and gave me one last desperate kiss. I will always love you, she whispered right into my ear. Then she clambered out of the cab. Clutching me close, she said a few words to the cabman and then walked over to a tall gateway. She murmured to the gatekeeper so softly that she had to repeat herself. Then the gate creaked open and we stepped inside. There must have been other mothers, other infants, because I've heard wailing all around us. My mother and I stood in front of a long polished table where a line of solemn men sat and asked questions. My mother answered, while I whimpered dolefully. Then we were led to a little room with a bright gaslight overhead. I blinked and tried to burrow into my mother's breast, but large, cold hands snatched me away from her. I was laid on my back on a hard table. My shawl was tugged away. My beautiful white dress was unbuttoned and taken from me. Both my petticoats were pulled over my head. They even removed my napkin, so I was lying there stark naked. The hard hands turned my head from side to side, prodded my belly, moved my arms and legs about, while I protested vigorously, screaming my head off. Then the hands grabbed me in a strange, coarse clothing, not mine at all. They picked me up and carried me away. My arms and legs were too small and weak to punch and kick. All I could do was scream. I screamed and screamed for my mother, but she wasn't there anymore. I was being carried down the endless corridors in a vast building, away from my mother forever. I was bound so tightly within the scratchy woolen shawl that I couldn't move. I was laid on my back in an iron cot, still screaming. I cried for my mother, but she didn't come to rescue me. I cried for my own soft, familiar clothes, but I stayed drugged in these harsh, worn garments reeking of garlic. I tried for the comfort of my thumb, trapped inside the shawl. I cried for gentle arms and warm, sweet milk. Now, what a terrible noise. You're disturbing all the other babies. What are you crying for, said one of the nurses, picking me up. What does she think I was crying for? I was only a few days old and I lost everything I loved. No wonder I howled, but she meant it kindly enough. She held me against her flat, starched chest and patted my back as if my problem was just a little trapped wind. There, nearly time for your feed, she said. She put me down again and I cried harder. I only whined for a few seconds when someone plucked me once more from my cot. I desperately hoped they were about to return me to my mother, but the hands that held me were coldly capable, not tender and stroking. A bottle was thrust into my mouth. My lips puckered and would not suck. It tasted wrong. It wasn't my mother. I choked and tried to spit out. This was a hopeless feeder, and she's tiny as it is. I don't know why they accepted her. She's not long for this world. They'll have to christen her quick or she'll be off to limbo land, said another. Let me try. I'll make her feed. I was passed over promptly and the bottle poked hard against my mouth. I kept my lips pressed together. She pinched my nose, so I had to open my mouth to breathe. I yelled furiously at this mean trick. Temper. Never mind, Limboland. She's like a little imp from hell, she said, giving me a shake. Take the bottle like a good girl. You don't want to starve, do you? I did not care whether I lived or died if I could not be with my mother. I cried all day until my throat was raw and shook all over, but it was no use. She still didn't come back. There were other babies crying too, though not as loudly as me. I couldn't see them and I was stuck on my back, but I could hear them. I heard their sucking and sighing after the hateful hands had lifted them from their cot. Won't you feed too, poor little lamb? This was a gentler voice with a smaller, softer hand. She wasn't my mother, but she cradled me almost as carefully. She didn't ram the choking bottle into my mouth straight away. She shook a few drops of milk onto her finger and struck against my lips, my cold lips. I opened my mouth and sucked. Ah, it's good, isn't it? Some more? She gave me more drops on her finger and I sucked it dry. She did this again and again when I opened my mouth eagerly for more. She edged the bottle very cautiously against my lips. I could not resist sucking and felt the sweet milk splashing down my sore throat. I still did not like the feel of the bottle, but I ached with hunger and thirst, so I sucked and sucked. My, look at Weenie with 25,629. She's got her sucking away a treat now. So the kind nurse was called Weenie, and 25629 seemed to be my name now. I was not old enough to understand numbers, but the long sound was harsh and I hated it. However, before long I was given another name. I was dressed in a gown so stiff with starch and I was stretched out rigidly, scarcely able to draw breath. I was carried to a new place, vast and echoing with strange windows that played patterns of red and blue on the stone floor. There was a solemn talk, and then a voice addressed me. I christen you Hetty Feather, he said, and sprinkled icy water on my head. I cried, trying to tell him that I didn't wish to be called Hetty Feather. That wasn't my name. It wasn't my real name. My real name was... But I couldn't speak yet, so I simply screamed, and someone tied and scolded, whispering that I was a bad example to the other babies. I paused for breath and heard thin copycat wails. I took satisfaction in the fact that no one else could achieve anywhere near my volume. For all that, I was so small. I was carted back to the sleeping room in disgrace. Gentle Weenie was there and rocked me gently. Hello, little Hetty. No need to cry so. There now, I'll take the christening robe off and fix a bottle for you. I was soon soothed, though I hiccuped a little, so I gulped my milk. Winnie laughed and hiccuped too, teasing me. I peered up at her, trying to focus. She had a round, rosy face with fair hair escaping from her cap. She wasn't special like my mother, but perhaps Weenie could be my second mother to me now. I was too small even to smile, but I fixed my blue eyes on her. She looked back, doing all the smiling for both of us. Other babies were wailing now, demanding attention, but Winnie still held me, whispering my new name, Little Hetty Feather. Well, you're light as a feather, no mistake. She whirled round and round so that I whirled too. We danced in and out of all the iron cots. It felt as if I was flying. I willed Weenie to whirl us right out of the door, away from this chill, puzzling prison, but another nurse spoke to her sharply and she put me back in my little bed, both of us breathless. I did not cry for my mother that night. I still thought of her longingly, but I consoled myself with the thought that I'll see Winnie in the morning, and every morning after that. I couldn't have been more wrong. The next day, new hands fed me, bathed me, and then dressed me in my uncomfortable clothes. The shawl was wound extra tightly and knotted at the ends, so that I resembled a small woolen parcel, and like a parcel, I was picked up, carried along corridors, taking aside the huge door, and posted into a waiting cab. I was stuffed into a large basket, padded with rags. I lay there, too stunned even to scream. What was happening to me now? I wanted Winnie. I wanted my mother. My heart started beating so fast it nearly burst through my shawl. Were they taking me back to my mother? The cab door opened again. I heard an infant wail, so sad, so scared. My mouth was shut so it couldn't be me. The cries grew frantic as another child was crammed into the basket beside me. I let out a little wail myself, and the other crying stopped in surprise. Then it started up again, and I started too. We drew breath at the same time, so we were crying in unison. Then I stopped, and the other baby stopped too. It was as if we were talking to each other. Hello, I'm here too. I'm just as anxious as you are. Where are they taking us? I've no idea. I want them to take me back to my mother. I want mine too. But at least we have each other. Our hands were trapped in our woolen shawl, but it was as if we were reaching out and clasping each other. The cab jerked and the horses' hooves clacked, and I remembered my own mother so painfully. Then we stopped and the door opened, and my fellow basket baby and I blinked in a sudden light. Someone took us up out of the cab, swinging us along in a vast, roaring, smoky hall. This brought back memories too. I now know that we were at a vast London station. Soon we were stuck in our basket upon a seat, and the train jerked into motion. The other baby and I cried lessly, but the steady chuck and whir of the wheels beneath us grew soothing, and soon we both slept. I dreamed that I was back in my mother's arms, but when I woke up, I was still trussed up in the shawl and stuffed in a basket, and the baby next to me was wailing forlornly. I cried too because I was hungry and thirsty, my stomach empty and aching. The baby beside me set up a mournful descant. When we lived in a huge bleak building, we had always been fed every few hours and our napkins changed. I was now wet and sore, my shawl damp and reeking, so we cried and cried, and then slept some more out of sheer exhaustion, and then the train slowed and stopped. The door opened, and we were swung out into the fresh air. Our carrier stamped his feet and marched forwards. There was a clamor of voices with a softer country burr. The basket rocked as hand reached in, lifting out my baby neighbor. This here is Master Gideon's meat, fresh from the Foundling Hospital. I heard laughing and cooking and clapping. I was left in the basket by myself. I screamed, and more hands came back for me. No chance of forgetting this one, Miss Hetty Feather. I'm not sure you want her, missus. She might be a little pushy shocker for screaming. She's been squealing like a pig ever since we left London. Oh well, it shows she's got a spirit, said a voice. Let's have a squint at her then. I was placed in her strong arms, my face pressed against a very large, soft chest. I nuzzled against her. She smelled of strange new things, lard and cabbage and potatoes, but she also smelled of sweet cabbage and potatoes, but she also smelled of sweet milk. I opened my lips eagerly, and I heard laughter all around. There, she's smiling at you, Mother. She's taken to you already. I was stunned. This was not my real mother. Was she a new mother? She held me in one arm, my basket baby brother in the other. Her large hand held us safe as she walked out of the station, children clamoring about her. I dare you say you'll do a good job with them, missus. You'll bring on the scrawny one something wonderful, said the basket carrier. It's a bit of a challenge, two little ones together, but I dare say I'll manage, she said. Let's take you home and get you fed, my poor little lambs, she murmured in our ears. We had a home. We had a mother. We were safe. We never had to go back to the gray, chilly baby hospital again. Don't mock, I said. I was only a few weeks old. I didn't know any better. So that is the end of chapter 1. Really interesting, right? About a girl, and what happened next will shock you. So bye guys. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.